In the heart of Lagos, Nigeria, where skyscrapers met crowded streets and luxury mingled with hardship, two worlds existed side by side. On one side were the wealthy elites, their lives filled with privilege, designer clothes, and private schools. On the other side were the children of the working class, those who struggled daily to make ends meet and who attended public schools like Iriti Secondary School. Tund was one of those children. He lived in a modest apartment in Ikeja, far from the glossy shopping malls and grand estates that defined the world of the rich. His mother worked as a seamstress, and his father was a mechanic, making just enough to keep their small household afloat. Tund was a bright and determined young man. Despite his circumstances, he had always believed that his hard work could change his future. Then there was Chuka, the son of a wealthy businessman who owned one of the largest construction firms in Lagos. Chuka went to an exclusive private school in the city, and everything about his life screamed privilege. From his expensive clothes to his sleek sports car, Chuka embodied the life of luxury that most people only dreamed of. But there was one thing that made Chuka particularly despised by the students at Iriti Secondary School: his arrogance. Chuka had always seen himself as superior to everyone else, particularly Tund. He would often taunt the children from the public school, mocking their humble backgrounds. One day, in the schoolyard, Chuka made a comment that would forever change the course of his life. It was lunch break at Iriti Secondary School, and the courtyard was buzzing with students chatting and laughing. Tund sat on the steps of the school building, eating his homemade lunch. The food was simple, rice and beans with a small piece of fish, but it was enough. He looked out across the courtyard at Chuka, who was surrounded by his group of friends. Chuka had always been the leader, the one everyone gravitated towards, but today something was different. Chuka walked over to Tund, a smug smile on his face. "Look at you, Tund," he sneered, "sitting there with your plastic lunch while I feast on imported pasta and chicken. You're nothing but a street rat pretending to be in the same league as us." Tund looked up, his expression calm but his fists clenched. He had learned over the years to ignore Chuka's taunts, but today something inside him snapped. "You think your money makes you better than me?" Tund asked, his voice steady. Chuka laughed loudly, drawing attention from the surrounding students. "Of course it does. My father is a successful businessman, and you, well, you're just a poor mechanic's son. No matter how hard you work, you'll always be beneath me. You'll never have what I have." The words stung, but Tund held his ground. He stood up, his eyes meeting Chuka's with a quiet defiance. "Keep your wealth, Chuka. One day, you'll see who really has the last laugh." Chuka scoffed and walked away, his friends following him, leaving Tund standing there with a sense of simmering anger. He didn't know why Chuka's words hurt him more than usual, but they did. Maybe it was because, for the first time, he truly realized the gap between them was wider than he had ever imagined. The days that followed were filled with tension. Chuka's mockery echoed in Tund's mind, and he couldn't shake the feeling that his own future was slipping out of his control. But Tund was no quitter. He threw himself into his studies, determined to rise above the obstacles that life had thrown at him. One evening, after a long day of studying, Tund sat at the kitchen table with his mother. She was mending a torn shirt, her fingers nimble and efficient despite the long hours she worked. "You're looking tired, my son," his mother said, glancing up from her work. "How was school today?" Tund sighed. "Same as usual, Mama." Chuka was at it again. His mother put down the shirt and looked at him with a knowing gaze. "Don't let him get to you, Tund. People like him will always mock what they don't understand. Your worth isn't measured by money or fancy things." Tund nodded but didn't say anything. His mother's words gave him comfort, but deep inside, he knew that he had to prove something, not just to Chuka, but to himself. The next day, something happened that changed everything. Tund received an invitation to participate in a prestigious science competition that would be held in Lagos. It was a big deal, one that could open doors to scholarships, recognition, and a brighter future. The competition would be tough, but Tun's passion for science and his determination to succeed pushed him to accept. Weeks passed, and Tund poured his heart and soul into preparing for the competition. His classmates at Iriti Secondary School were shocked by his dedication. They had never seen Tund so focused, so determined. Even Chuka, who had mocked him in the past, couldn't help but notice his growing commitment. On the day of the competition, Tund stood at the entrance of the conference hall, his heart pounding in his chest. He was surrounded by students from prestigious schools all over Lagos, many of whom came from wealthy families. But Tund felt no fear. He knew that he had the skills, the knowledge, and the drive to succeed. As the competition began, Tund moved through the rounds with ease. He answered questions that left the other participants struggling, and his innovative ideas for solving complex problems impressed the judges. As the final round approached, the tension in the room was palpable. Everyone was eager to see who would come out on top. Chuka, who had entered the competition just to show off his wealth and connections, was struggling. His answers were lackluster, and his arrogance had made him underestimate the challenge. As the final results were announced, Tund found himself in the top 3, and Chuka, despite his wealth and prestige, had barely scraped through. The final announcement came as a shock to everyone in the room. Tund had won the competition, securing first place with his groundbreaking solution to a complex scientific problem. The audience erupted in applause, and Tund felt a rush of pride and validation. For the first time in his life, he felt like he had truly proven his worth. Chuka, standing in the corner, watched in stunned silence. The look of disbelief on his face was evident. How could someone like Tund, the poor kid, have outperformed him, the son of one of the richest men in Lagos? After the ceremony, Tund was surrounded by congratulatory messages and admiration from the other students. But his eyes found Chuka, who stood alone, staring at the floor. For a brief moment, their eyes met, and Chuka's expression was one of defeat. "You really did it," Chuka said, his voice tinged with disbelief. "I thought I was the one who would win. But how?" Tund smiled, his gaze steady. "It's not about money, Chuka. It's about heart, determination, and believing in yourself when no one else does." Chuka stood still for a moment, absorbing Tund's words. For the first time, he understood the true meaning of success. It wasn't about how much money you had, but about the effort you put into achieving your dreams. In the weeks that followed, Tund's life changed in ways he hadn't expected. He received scholarship offers from top universities, and his achievement in the competition opened doors to opportunities that he had once thought were out of reach. Chuka, on the other hand, began to change. He reached out to Tund, offering a genuine apology for the way he had treated him in the past. The two former rivals began to form an unexpected friendship, one built on mutual respect and understanding. As the years went by, Tund's success continued to grow. He completed his education with honors, and his work in the field of science began to gain national recognition. Chuka, though no longer the arrogant rich kid he once was, found his own path, one that was not defined by wealth but by his newfound humility and drive. Tund had proven that success wasn't measured by the size of your bank account but by the size of your heart and the depth of your character. Looking back, Tund realized that the mockery he had endured from Chuka had been a catalyst for his success. It had fueled his determination, driving him to prove not only to Chuka but to the world that he could achieve greatness. The rich kid's mockery had backfired in the most unexpected way. It had given Tund